The way EIQ solves all these problems uniquely from other different competitor products that we have, one, we are an integrated platform. Second, we have Agentic AI, GenAI baked into the platform. It is not an afterthought. The third thing that is going to be very unique about our product is that the application construct itself will be our generative AI, Agentic AI driven. Finally, the goal that we want to reach is it will be EIQ build me an app and it will build you an end-to-end app asking you all the questions.
Welcome to the EIQ Waves podcast, where we explore what it truly takes to scale automation across the enterprise responsibly and intelligently. In each episode, we go beyond the buzzwords to bring you grounded insights from the leaders who are actively building, governing, and shaping the future of AI and automation in the real world. Joining us today is Nikhil Sharma, Vice President Technology at EvoluteIQ. Nikhil brings deep expertise in enterprise technology and AI-driven automation, working with organizations to build scalable, intelligent solutions that accelerate digital transformation. Also, we have Rashmi Joshi, Program Manager at EvoluteIQ. Rashmi works at the intersection of enterprise transformation, helping organizations deliver complex digital initiatives and turn innovative ideas into measurable business outcomes.
Let's begin.
Why can't GenAI directly power automation?
The problem with generative AI is that it is probabilistic in nature. What it means to say, as all of us understand, if we have used any text generation from any of these large LLMs that are available, what you will see is, given the same input, they will generate different sentences, different words every time. But when we are looking at any automation, the enterprise automation, there it has to be deterministic. I cannot be making mistakes on approvals, the amounts that are required to be deducted, or any of these kind of flows that are happening. That is the main problem with generative AI.
So this is where EIQ comes in?
Exactly. So as we were talking right now, the generative AI piece is non-deterministic. Now to make that deterministic, we have various components which are available as the core part of the platform. Just to explain about EIQ in a very short and simple manner. So EIQ is an enterprise automation platform. So it helps you in building business processes, it helps you in building data processing pipelines, it helps you in integrating with a lot of external systems. It has a data management layer, and also it has a capability where you can build and use your traditional ML models, and it also has the capability where generative AI and agentic AI features can be built in. Now what happens is many of the enterprises have all these systems, but they are all not as one unified single platform. We provide a unified single platform, and the other good part of that is, now because it is a unified single platform, the generative and agentic AI is also not like it is not like in a traditional one. What you'll have to do is you'll have to plug in into each of these systems. Here it can be plugged in into a single layer, well controlled, well boundaried, if I can put it that way, within the platform.
Within the foundation, where does GenIQ come in?
GenIQ is the component which is available in the EvoluteIQ platform, which handles the Agentic AI and GenAI part of the features that you want to develop. Now, this could be extraction of entities from natural language, in a way converting unstructured data into unstructured data, pulling out sentiment, pulling out any other kind of labeling that you want to do on top of your natural data, on your natural language. Example being like, as you know, we keep working with many of these kind of systems where email comes in for ticketing systems. So email comes in and then it has to be passed to a generative AI layer, which will pull out the intent and also pull out the category. And based on that, further down, as we have already talked about, it will trigger a process flow, which will assign the ticket appropriately to the appropriate agent as determined based on the agentic output from the GenAI layer.
You spoke about these examples and everything, right? So how does that coordination actually happen?
That's a great question. So now what happens is, for the agents to work together or any actionable items to work together, we have a single repository. So in that repository, when you are pushing your agents, you are pushing in your tools, you are pushing in your MCP servers. But when you are pushing in, you are also bounding them. You are bounding them based on what data they can look into, what actions they can finally perform, what role they play when they are performing this. Once this happens, when a particular task has to be done end to end, like the example that I gave you, right, that an email identification has to be done. Now, once the email comes, the GenIQ platform will internally go and tell this execution layer. That execution layer will look into this mesh of all the agents that are there, and it will automatically figure out which is the proper one that it should be using. And then this gets coordinated, and then the complete works gets finished, right? So that is the whole purpose out here. So it is a bounded execution within a mesh-based architecture, and that is why it is also scalable.
This sounds really powerful, but how do you ensure the control part of it?
So that's the most critical part of the architecture, and the EIQ platform lets you fulfill that. So basically what happens is the GenAI interprets the data, the Agentic AI coordinates, and all the flows which I have talked about previously basically execute it. So you execute it using workflow, you execute it, the boundaries are maintained by the decision rule engines. Any data that is required is pulled through the data flows or the connector engines. And finally, the execution layer executes all this by putting it together. So just to give you an example, so we were working with a large consulting company of US. So there what was happening is these consultants have to keep sending out mails, flyers periodically to their clients. Just to take an example, right, say the client is from a petrochemical industry. So what they have to do is they have to look at the various sources, which is the internal knowledge bases, external news, or whatever else might be happening. Based on that, they have to generate a newsletter or a flyer, but related to only petrochemical sector, hydrocarbons, and send it out to their client. Now, the problem that the client was facing was this was very irregular, in the sense many times consultant forgot, looking at the amount of data that is available, putting together a newsletter or a flyer became very difficult for them in a proper contextual manner. So they came to us for help. How did we help them using all that what we have talked about, from mesh architecture to the boundaries and all that, right? So there were different kind of agents which were defined. A few of the agents went and looked into the knowledge base of the company. Few of these agents went outside onto the internet and looked up the data. And again, as you understand, because these have to be very industry specific, the consultants were serving large amount of industries. So the agents also had to know which industry are they going to look for data for. The second thing was, when they were looking at internal data, there had to be guardrails built into it, that there is no cross pollination of data. What I mean to say is, client A's specific data should not be going to client B within the same domain, right? So that is where your whole mesh architecture with all the governance came in. So once the request was triggered, right, that I have to generate a newsletter. Now that is also very interesting, how this request was triggered. That is where the whole power of EIQ platform comes in. I'll just dwell on that later, but just right now concentrating on the generative AI mesh architecture and the control boundaries part of it. So once it was triggered, automatically the execution in the GenIQ execution engine figured out that it's for petrochemical industry. It is specific to this reason. Based on that, those agents went, pulled the data, curated it in that manner. So translation had to be brought in because certain data was coming from, say, French sources, certain data was coming from Dutch sources, but finally the client was English speaking client. So next, once the data had been collected, automatically this from the mesh architecture, it knew, okay, I have to do the translation. So it picked up the translation and translated the text. Finally, because we knew that a flyer has to be built, this data was given to a PDF agent which generated the PDF, and finally a mail agent which sent out the mail. So that is how all these agents work together, and each agent had their boundaries defined, what data they can look into. Each agent had the data related boundaries defined. Within that data set, within that data, what data set they can look at, right? So this is how everything came together. Now, second thing, coming to overall, how did EIQ help in overall picture, right? So because we are an end-to-end automation platform, as I have told, the consultant had categories of client. So for certain clients, this flyer has to go out every week. For certain clients, it has to go out every month. For certain clients, it has to go out every quarter, those kind of things. This information of their client and all this specification was stored in a third-party system. So we had a connector which was going, looking at that, pulling the data, and then when was the last communication that has happened was in Salesforce. So it was looking at that. Based on both these things, it was figuring out, okay, now it is the time that I have to send out this communication again. That is where the process flow connectors, all those got triggered. Now finally, when everything was done, the mail, as we are talking about the boundaries and conditions, the mail might have something wrong, right? So what was happening was, using our workflow and connector engine again, the generated mail was being put in the draft folder of the consultant. Because we also have a portal engine, as you know. Once the consultant verified all this is proper, that is where the mail was being sent out. And then there was analytics happening behind it. This data was getting saved, that this mail has gone out. Was there any leads that was generated because of it, or any other thing that has happened? That was again coming in and getting saved in the platform application that was developed on our platform. And then there is where our data flow came in. The data flow processed all this data and sent out analytics reports to and generated appropriate reports. This report could also be generated on demand using a GenAIQ. So you could just put your natural query saying that, okay, tell me how many mails has Nikhil as a consultant sent out to which all. It will generate that and give it to you. There, within the GenAIQ, again, which data I can look at, which clients and all that, that was again being controlled. So that is where the control layer, the GenAIQ layer, the overall automation coming together works, as you can see.
You spoke about boundaries and everything. So does that mean that we are taking care of the hallucination part of it?
Yes, boundaries, what happens, as I told you, when you are building an agent or when you are publishing anything into our mesh architecture, there are certain controls and metadata that you have to publish with it. And during execution, those are respected, right? So as I was talking about, so say if you are building an agent which gather data from a client, you can set the boundaries saying that you can only go to this data source, or within that data source you can only go to within data set. There are different control mechanisms for that built in. Second, coming to the hallucination part of it, right? So any generative AI system, we cannot say it will not hallucinate. It will hallucinate. So what we also do is, within our execution engine, once the generative AI output has been generated, we assign, using different algorithms, we assign a confidence score to it. Now, going down further, the rules engine and the BRMS engine can also come into picture based on this score that has been assigned, or you can build your own rules on top of the content that has been generated to make sure no hallucination passes through. And finally, whatever happens, as I told you, because we are end-to-end process automation platform, you can always bring in a human in the loop, and the human who comes in can also rate the output. and that rating can get back into this loop and the hallucination get reduced even more. Just to give you an example on that, so what was happening was, this is for another client of ours who was in a healthcare domain. So there what was happening was, the client was asking, from a sales perspective, they were asking for certain reports to be generated. The interesting part is, again, because we also have a portal engine on our platform, so the sales representative or the person could log into the system, give his query in natural English. The system went and looked up into the databases and other sources to generate the report. Now when the report was getting generated, there was also intelligence built into it, i.e. should it be a graph based reports, it should only have graphs, or it should be a textual report. If it is textual, should it have tables, or it should be descriptive, all those kind of things, right? And there were a few challenges, right? Just to give you a very short example is, somebody might say, give me the sales data for CA. Now what is CA? Is it for a state, California, or is it for a client, right? So all those kind of things came into picture. So what was happening was, in the backend, our complete pipeline was running. As the pipeline was running, the final rating which the user gave, based on that, all this was getting saved in the background. Next time if the same kind of question came up, we already knew that, oh, this has been highly rated. So we picked up from there and reran the pipeline in that order. So that's why the reports that were generated slowly got more matured and much more bounded.
Nikhil, when we talk about enterprises, and the one big question usually comes into picture is about the governance part of it.
So governance and security. So where does the governance and security come in? So we have governance and security at each and every layer in the platform. So as you know, the platform has a visual design paradigm where you visually design your flows, your agents, those kind of things. So once the application developer has designed these things, so the first thing, the security and governance that comes is the flows or the agent that has been designed, that itself goes through an approval process before being used in the production, right? Before, rather, I would say, being deployed to be used in production, right? So that is the first layer of security and governance that comes in. Secondly, each of these artifacts are tied to a particular role. What I mean to say by particular role or a user is, who can execute them, what action a particular role or user can take. And if you want, on our platform, the agents can also be assigned a persona. When I say persona, it is more about, they can be assigned a user role. When the flow is executing and that user role has the permission, then only that agent or that flow will get executed. So that is the second layer. During the execution, the governance and the security comes in. The third layer is, when you are defining this, as we have already talked about it, again, just to reiterate that point, of the context within the whole application. Can a particular agent, particular flow, particular data flow can have access to, and in what level? When I say level, you might have access to the data, but then any PII data, when it is returned back to that agent, or will be masked, right? So all that can also be defined before it is even executed, during the design phase itself. That is why that whole security and governance layer is very tight within the platform. Again, it boils down to that everything is in a single platform. So the governance and security flows from top to bottom to all these flows in an integrated manner. Whereas if you were not using EIQ platform, there would be separate systems handling all this. Getting all that to work in a unified manner becomes very difficult, and where there are leakages and all, you won't come to know.
As a closing note, how does EIQ solve these problems uniquely?
The way EIQ solves all these problems uniquely from other different competitor products that we have, one, we are an integrated platform. Second, we have Agentic AI, GenAI baked into the platform. It is not an afterthought. The third thing that is going to be very unique about our product is that the application construct itself will be our generative AI, Agentic AI driven. Finally, the goal that we want to reach is, it will be EIQ build me an app and it will build you an end-to-end app asking you all the questions. For that, we are using our own framework, which we talked about, the mesh architecture, the different kind of agents, they come together, generate the flows. So the time to market, time to build an application, all that becomes very fast, and the turnaround time is very less. So that is one of the biggest way that we differentiate ourselves from anyone else in the market. Thank you very much, Rashmi, for having me today. It was nice talking about the product, and hope to continue this later.
Thank you, Nikhil, for joining.
If you enjoyed this episode of the EIQ Waves podcast, don't forget to share, subscribe, and leave a comment. And stay tuned for brand new episodes that shaped the future of enterprise automation.